the technical aspect of producing is the part that I think most people understand. Most people who don't produce understand best. I find when I've done production like the Elvis thing, generally if anybody has any reaction to hearing that I did a project like that, the most reaction I generally get is, oh, sounds good, which is good, and which is a huge part of it. Obviously, if you're working with an engineer, less so, and in that case I was. Dave Allert, who recorded that record, did a fantastic job. He's a really great engineer. About engineering, the main thing, if I was to give advice to people, and this is something that it took me a little while to figure out, but I did a lot of home recording, and that was sort of what got me to that point. But, use your ears. It sounds obvious, but it's amazing how often people get stuck into, and I've worked with engineers who, kind of have a pattern of doing things, and it's not a pattern, it's not a creative pattern. Like whenever I'm doing a drum session, I'm in there with my, you got to follow the chain. That's the most important thing, I think, using your ears. But you use your ears at every step of the chain from, say it's a drum kit. I'm in there with the drum kit. If we're working on the snare, I've got my head under the snare. If I have a sound in my head that I'm going for, first make sure it's happening there, and tune the drums. Use a different snare drum. Use a different drummer. Depending, what the project is, if you're able to use different musicians, but make sure they're hitting it the way you want it. If you don't like the drum sound, it might be, some people are like, well, we don't have the best microphones, or I wish we had this other compressor or whatever. Mix Magazine had this amazing blah blah blah. Well, look at the stick the guy's using. Maybe you want a stick with a wooden head, or maybe you want to use brush sticks, or maybe you want to use the plastic things, or maybe you want to get the guy to hit in a different way, or hit in a different part of the drum. If it's a repetitive thing, you get him to hit a certain part of the snare. So from the source, what's this actual sound being made, to then, of course, the mic placement and figuring out that, so I sort of follow the chain backwards, or really forwards, from the musician to the instrument, to the mic, to the compressor or whatever, and the preamp you're using, and then whatever tape format, or the converters, or if you're going digital. So making sure that every step of that chain is right for the vision of what the thing you're making is. And there's not a necessarily good or bad, it's just what's the vision, and then what's the right choice to make each step of the way to make sure that it's supporting and making that vision come to life in the right way. So that's kind of my main thing about engineering is, listen to the musician, go all the way back that way, and make sure that every step is sounding the way you want, and listen to it, and, generally I try to avoid making big EQ decisions on the way down, just because it gives you more freedom later. That's sort of I've heard that's kind of an American approach. I've often heard that English engineers print their effects more, print their EQs more. I don't know if that's true or not, but I tend to go as straight as I can, just so I have choices later, but also make sure that I'm getting what I want out of the instrument in the front. So